Your biggest fear isn't failure, it's seeing who you really are. You've failed before. You've watched your dreams crumble, felt the weight of loss press down on your chest. You've faced the disappointment, not just of others, but of yourself. And yet, there's something deeper, something darker, a fear that isn't tied to the fear of failure itself. You think you're afraid of failing, of being unworthy, of not being enough. You think your biggest fear is that the world won't see you as capable, as strong, as successful. But what if the truth is much worse than that? What if your greatest fear isn't failure? What if your biggest fear is facing the truth about who you really are? It's easy to say you're afraid of failing. Failure is a story we've all been told. Failure is something we can measure. We can see it. We can touch it. We can explain it. Failure has a clear beginning, middle, and end. But the truth about who you are, the truth is harder to face. It doesn't have a neat beginning. It doesn't fit in the box of good or bad. It's murky, elusive, and messy. There are parts of you that you've hidden away, locked in dark corners, shoved down into places you dare not go. You don't even look there, because you know that if you do, you might see things you can't ignore anymore. You might see what you've been running from. You might realize that the person you've been pretending to be is just a mask, and the real you, the one hiding in the shadows, is someone you don't recognize, someone you might not even like. You fear what would happen if you uncovered that truth. Would you still recognize yourself? Would anyone else? Because it's easier to live with the illusion. It's easier to believe that you're only afraid of failure. But deep down, you know that's not it. The real fear is what happens when the mask comes off and you see what's been hidden all along. You've been running from your own reflection, afraid that it might show you something you can't unsee. Maybe it's the parts of you don't like, the parts that feel broken, weak, or ashamed. Maybe it's the parts of you've denied, the parts that crave something you've never allowed yourself to have. What if you could no longer hide from that? What if all of your failures, your fears, your insecurities were only a distraction from the bigger truth, that you've been avoiding your true self all along? You failed, but the failure wasn't the worst part. The worst part is realizing that who you are underneath it all is someone you've been avoiding. So ask yourself, what if failure is not the thing you fear the most? What if it's the truth of who you are, and what happens when you can no longer hide from it? You wake up every day. You go through the motions. You do what's expected of you. You perform. You pretend. You put on your face, the one the world sees, the one that's calm, composed, capable. But deep inside, there's a quiet gnawing, a whisper that tells you something is missing. You tell yourself it's okay. You push it down, lock it away. You convince yourself that success is just around the corner, that the work you're doing now will pay off, that the person you are today is enough. But what if that's the lie? What if you've been lying to yourself all along? You're afraid to look too closely, afraid to dig deeper, because you know what you'll find. The pieces of yourself that you've been avoiding, the parts you've buried under layers of self-imposed expectations, the ones you told yourself didn't matter, but they do matter. You've been chasing a version of yourself that doesn't exist, a version that doesn't make mistakes, that doesn't have flaws, that doesn't feel weak or lost. But what if this version of you, the one you've been trying to project into the world, isn't the real you at all? And what if, in your pursuit of becoming someone you think you should be, you've forgotten who you actually are? You've spent so long trying to live up to an ideal that you've lost sight of the person underneath. The person who has desires and fears, the person who struggles, who stumbles, who fails, the person who's imperfect, the person who doesn't always have it together. You've built walls to protect yourself from feeling those things. You've crafted a persona that others will accept. But the truth is, the more you hold on to that mask, the further you drift from who you're meant to be. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're stuck. Because you're not facing the truth about yourself. You're not seeing yourself clearly. Maybe, like so many of us, you've been afraid to look at the truth, because deep down, you know that once you do, you can never go back to pretending. And the thought of that, the thought of seeing your true self, terrifies you. Because when you finally see who you really are, when you stop running, you'll have to confront everything you've been hiding from. All the things you've ignored, all the parts of you that don't fit the narrative of perfection. But here's the question. What if that's where the freedom lies? What if the truth you're afraid of isn't something to fear at all, but the very thing you've been seeking your whole life? What if you stopped running from who you are and instead embraced it? What if the fear isn't about the truth itself, but about letting go of the illusion that you've been clinging to? The illusion that you need to be something else to be loved, to be accepted, to be whole. What if the most powerful thing you could do right now is look yourself in the mirror and finally accept the person you see there? You've spent your life learning how to survive. You've been taught how to fit in, how to play the part, how to put on the right face at the right time. But here's the thing. Surviving isn't the same as living. You've learned to adapt, to mold yourself to whatever the world demands. You've learned to hide the parts of you that might not be acceptable. You've buried the emotions that you were told were weak or ugly. You've built a life around a version of yourself that the world can tolerate. But what if that version of you isn't the real you at all? What if the true you, the one who's been buried under years of conditioning, is someone much more powerful than the mask you wear? What if the parts of you that you've hidden are not weaknesses, but the raw, unfiltered truths of who you really are? Carl Jung, the great psychologist, once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And maybe that's where the real fear lies, not in failure, not in rejection, but in truly seeing yourself. Because once you see who you really are, you can no longer ignore the parts of you that make you uncomfortable. You can no longer deny the things you've hidden, the emotions you've repressed, the desires you've pushed down. And the fear isn't just about what you might find, it's about what it means for your entire identity. Who would you be without the stories you've told yourself? Without the mask? Without the walls you've built to keep the real you hidden? But here's the truth. You can't live fully until you've embraced the truth of who you are. The person you've been avoiding isn't a stranger. It's you. It's always been you. Jung believed that we all have a shadow, the parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, the parts that society told us were unacceptable, the parts that we were ashamed of. But the shadow isn't a curse, it's a gift, because in confronting it, we reclaim our power. And maybe that's what you've been running from all these years. Not failure, not rejection, but your own power, your own truth. What if the reason you're stuck in this cycle of self-doubt and fear isn't because there's something wrong with you, but because you've never given yourself permission to be whole? What if the real you is stronger than you've ever allowed yourself to believe? And what if, in accepting that, you could finally stop pretending to be someone you're not and step into the person you were always meant to be? So, now that you've looked inside, what do you see? Is it the person you thought you'd find? Or is there something else, something deeper, something truer, waiting to be uncovered? You've been running for so long, but what if the thing you're searching for has been inside you all along, just waiting to be acknowledged? Maybe it's time to stop looking outside for the answers. Maybe the real work begins when you stop trying to change who you are and instead start accepting the person you already are. What would happen if you finally let yourself be seen? What if, for once, you stopped hiding from yourself and simply allowed yourself to be? There's a mirror in front of you, but it's not the mirror you're used to. It's not the one that reflects the face you put on every day, the one that shows the version of you the world is comfortable with. It's not the version of you that others approve of. It's the one you've avoided. You've looked into mirrors before, but have you ever looked deep into the one that shows your true self? Take a moment, stand still, and gaze into that reflection. What do you see? At first, it's blurry, like the glass is fogged with all the things you've hidden. But as you breathe, the fog begins to lift, and there you are, the real you. not the mask, not the version that fits neatly into the roles you've played. This is the version of you that you've been running from, the parts of you that you've shoved down, the feelings you've ignored, the truth you've buried in layers of distractions. And for the first time, you see it clearly. You see all the parts of you that you've tried so hard to escape, the desires that scare you, the imperfections you've been taught to hide, the fears that whisper in your ear when the noise of the world fades. You see the cracks in your armor, the parts where the light is starting to shine through. But it's not a perfect image. It's fragmented, incomplete, and maybe that's the most honest version of you there is. But you can't see it now. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the healing begins. Not in hiding from the broken pieces, but in finally acknowledging them. What if the truth is that you've been running from yourself all this time, not because you're broken, but because you're afraid of embracing all that you are? The shadow parts, the messy, raw, unpolished truth. And maybe, just maybe, those very parts are the key to your freedom. Not the polished version of you that's been so carefully constructed, but the real, unfiltered, raw you. The one who's been hiding behind the mask, waiting to be seen. What if the only thing standing between you and your true self is the mask you've been wearing? What if everything you've ever wanted is just on the other side of that fear? It's time to stop running. It's time to take off the mask, to let yourself be seen, to embrace the person you've been avoiding. Because the person you fear the most might just be the one who holds the key to your freedom. You've looked into the mirror, but you haven't looked deep enough. The reflection staring back at you is familiar, but it's not the whole picture. You've spent your life constructing an image of who you think you should be, the version of you that is strong, successful, put together, the version of you that others can admire, the one who fits neatly into the expectations placed upon you. But have you ever asked yourself, what would happen if you let go of all the roles? What would happen if you stopped trying to live up to the image you've created for yourself? Because the truth is, the person you've been trying to be is not the real you. And deep down, you know it. That's the reason for the emptiness, the disconnection, the fear. You've been so busy living for others, performing, pretending to be something you're not, that you've forgotten how to simply be. But it's time to face the truth. You are not the version of yourself that the world sees. You are not the roles you've been playing. You are not the mask you wear. And the more you try to hold on to that mask, the further you get from the person you're meant to be. There is a deeper part of you waiting to be acknowledged, a part that's been buried beneath all the expectations, the judgments, the fears, and that part is calling to you. But it's not easy to hear. It's quiet, almost imperceptible. It's buried under the noise of your mind, under the weight of everything you've been taught to believe. But the truth is that the more you deny that part of yourself, the more disconnected you feel. The more you push it away, the more you lose touch with who you really are. And deep inside, you know that if you don't stop running, you'll never find peace. You'll never feel truly whole. Because the parts of you that you're hiding from are the very pieces that make you complete. So what would happen if you stopped denying your true self? What if you allowed yourself to feel the things you've been avoiding? What if you gave yourself permission to be vulnerable, to be raw, to be real? The fear is not that you're broken. The fear is that you'll have to face everything you've been running from. The fear is that you'll see yourself in a way that you've never seen before, and in that moment, you might realize something you've always known. You are enough. But that realization won't come if you keep hiding. It won't come if you keep pretending. It won't come if you keep running from yourself. The fear you feel isn't about failure. It isn't about rejection. It's about confronting your truth. It's about finally looking at who you really are and accepting it. Because the person you are, the one that you've been hiding from, is the person who holds the key to your freedom. The real you is stronger than any version of yourself you've tried to be. The real you is powerful, beautiful, and enough. So look into the mirror again. This time, don't look away. Don't try to fix what you see. Just let it be. Let yourself be, because you are already whole, and the only thing standing in the way of your peace is the fear of accepting that truth. So now, you've come this far. You've looked into the mirror. You've seen the mask you've been wearing for so long. You've confronted the parts of yourself you've been running from. And still, you're standing at the edge. The truth is staring you in the face, but you're not sure if you're ready to cross that line. Because here's the thing. Once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. Once you embrace who you really are, there's no going back to the way things were. You've been living in a world of illusions, but now that you've peeled back the layers, you know what's real. And maybe that terrifies you. What happens when the mask comes off? What happens when you stop pretending to be who you're not? What happens when you finally stop hiding from yourself? You've spent your whole life trying to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. You've molded yourself, shaped yourself, and even silenced parts of yourself to survive. But now, you're standing at a crossroads. Do you continue hiding behind the mask? Do you keep pretending to be someone you're not? Or do you take a deep breath, let go of the fear, and step into the person you're meant to be? You see, the truth is, you've been running from yourself for so long because you've been afraid of what you might find. But what if the truth isn't something to fear at all? What if the truth is the key to your freedom? What if the real you, the one you've been so terrified to face, is the person who holds all the answers? You've been waiting for permission to be yourself. But the truth is, you've always had it. You've always been enough. You've always been worthy of love, of acceptance, and of peace. So what now? Now, you step into the unknown. Now, you embrace the parts of yourself that you've hidden. Now, you stop running. Now, you finally let yourself be seen. Because once you stop hiding, once you stop pretending, you'll realize that the only person you've ever needed permission from is yourself. The journey you've been on wasn't about fixing yourself. It was about remembering who you really are. The fear you've been holding on to, the fear of facing your true self, was never about failure. It was about embracing your power. And now that you know the truth, now that you see who you are, there's nothing left to fear. You are already whole. You are already free. And the only thing left for you to do now is to live like it. So take one last look in the mirror, see yourself for who you truly are, and then take the first step into the life that's waiting for you, the one where you no longer hide, no longer run, and no longer fear being seen. Because the truth you've been running from is the truth you've always needed to set you free.